Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Try to get everybody in here. All right, let me get the slides up. All right, so there go the slides. It is the same objective as yesterday's. So we're continuing from yesterday. So it's up to you if you want to just add this onto the bottom or if you want to start a whole new section. That is up to you. But it is day 2 of Andrew Jackson. So we're going to start in a little under a minute. I want to give everybody a chance to get in here on time so they don't miss anything. We are a little bit short of our normal numbers. All right, guys, it is 2:25. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hopefully,
How you doing, Mr. Cabazos?
Doing good, Gio. Doing good. Hopefully, if you're coming in a little late, you can get ready. How are you doing, Gio?
I'm there.
You're there. I'll take it.
I'm there.
Starters.
I'm here.
You're
I'm
late.
here enough to
You're late, sir. You're late.
actually. I was on time. I was earlier. I was like 5 minutes early, ma'am. Excuse you.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. 2.5 minutes. Make sure, actually, we're only going to do 2 minutes. You don't need the half. Make sure you get the objective. Again, it's yesterday's objective. New key terms. There are new key terms. And I want you to start thinking of, and I even want you to type it in the box. You don't have to, don't hit enter yet, if I say so. But how would you describe Andrew Jackson as a president based on yesterday? So, like, was he a good president? Was he a bad president? Was he a mad president? Give me, how would you describe him? And a little bit of a why. Make sure there's a why in there. Like, he was good because of this, or he was bad because of this, or he was mad because of this. Don't press enter. Just type it in the box, get it ready, and then we're going to nuke the chat box after 2 minutes. So timer's on. Go ahead and go. Make sure you have your key terms as well. Make sure your objective is good to go. About a little less than a minute. All right. So if you've typed out a response, press enter. If you haven't typed out a response, type one out now. How was Andrew Jackson as a president based on the info from yesterday? How would you describe him as a president? Go. Let's see. You got about 40 seconds to finish that up. How would you describe Andrew Jackson as a president? Type it in, press enter. Type it in, press enter. How would you describe Andrew Jackson as a president? If you're just getting in, how would you describe Andrew Jackson as a president? Got one response so far. That's it. That's a fire response. I like it. It's another good one. Three solid ones so far. I like the use of the term populist. I like the good intentions, the good notes. Ignoring the Supreme Court, that's awesome. So good responses from those of you who did respond. Mind you, remember, right, I checked the chat box after everything. Each chat box is saved. So thank you to those 3 who responded. Let's go ahead and move forward because we're running low on time. All right, so objective we already talked about is political differences, political disagreements. That's what we're going to continue talking about today. And we're moving forward. We're still in 1800 to 1848. So the first key point's up. The nullification crisis is a dispute, and it's a dispute between Jackson's government and the government of the state of South Carolina. The whole issue is over a state's right to null a federal law. What does null mean? If we know what null means, someone tell me what it means. If we don't know what it means, type nope, no clue. It's okay if you don't know what it means, but if you do know what it means, let me know. So like, do we know it? Yes or no? Null. If I was to null something, what am I doing to it? Yes, no, I need to see it. No, okay. Invalid, okay. So let's say that I have a deal. I make a deal with you guys and I say, hey, show up in the Zoom on Saturday, and if you show up, I'll give you extra points. And then let's say Friday night, I put on Teams, I have nulled this deal. I've canceled it. So when you null something, you're canceling it or you're ignoring it. So when the states say they're going to null a federal tariff, it means they're going to ignore it. They're going to cancel it. They're not going to participate in it. So the whole point, the whole crisis, the nullification crisis is going to be over federal tariffs and states, specifically South Carolina, ignoring the tariff and not paying it. So again, I'll leave you about a minute and change to get down that key point in your notes. And then we'll get started as to the reasons why the crisis happened and what it was. Andrew Jackson response? I'll take it. There's definitely people who agree with you. If you are coming in late, we are on the first key point. Reminder, guys, class does not start at 2:30. It starts at 2:25. Ever since we did that schedule change, the time changed a little bit. So about 30 seconds left on the key point, and then we're going to move on. So if you're just got in here, screenshot this, and then we'll move on, and then you can fill it into your notes a little later. Null is to cancel or to ignore. Null is to cancel or to ignore. Typically when you're nulling something, this is one of those like oldie terms that no one uses anymore. Typically when you say like, hey, our deal's nullified, they're canceling it. They're ignoring it. So before the crisis happens, there was a tariff passed in 1828. That's the tariff of 1828, otherwise known as the Tariff of Abominations. It was created by John Quincy Adams, but it was enacted by Jackson. So Jackson's already elected by this point. So when the tariff goes into practice, Jackson's the one doing it. What does this tariff do? Why is it such an abomination? Well, It protects northern industry and western agriculture. These are the numbers. You don't really need the numbers. But it harshly affects, or it hurts, I should say, it hurts the South the most. So really quick, you can either come up here and say it, or you can type it in. How's the South going to feel with a tariff that helps the North but hurts them? It like exclusively hurts them, and it hurts them a lot as far as economically goes. So how's the South going to feel about this? It's very obvious. How are they going to feel? Somebody tell me.
Betrayed.
Betrayed. They're going to hate it. They're not going to like this. And that's true for the entire South, but it's especially true for South Carolina. Now, I want you to look at this image, and chat box only, what do you see? So we'll do this for about 45 seconds. What do you see in the image? Just type it in. What's one thing you notice? Taxes, okay. What else? Tax sign's good. Tariffs, yep. They're all on one side, right? What else? What else do we see? What do you see on the opposite side of the taxes sign? Big guy, small guy, yep. What else? Look at the backgrounds. Toilets, yep. Look at the buildings. What about the buildings? What's different about them? A boat, yep. Ship. South getting poor, North gets rich. Okay, good. I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for descriptions of the buildings, and I'm looking for something else that no one's pointed out yet. The ship's there, yes. Toilet sign, yep. I'm gonna start moving my mouse cursor a little bit. Better infrastructure, I like that. Okay, yeah, because you see like the fancy road and the nice building. Sign is domestic manufacturing is what that sign says, but yes, you're right. About this thing that I keep circling. What is this? What is it telling you? It's flat out telling you what? It's flat out saying it. Skinny guy with, read it though. North and South, right? So all the taxes are in the South. There we go. Max got it, right? Yeah, so North and South, all the taxes are in the South, and then they're not on the North. The North is all fancy, fat, happy. The South looks just kind of pissed off, right? That's basically what you're getting at. Awesome. I appreciate you guys participating in that. But yes, that's what's going on. This is from that time, by the way. This is how a lot of Southerners interpreted this. They're angry. They're just getting taxed. They have bad infrastructure. They're in dirt. There's some shipping, whoop-de-doo, whereas the fancy North is being fancy and manufacturing all that stuff. So again, what do you need for this slide? You need the Tariff of 1828, this whole thing. And you need to know that it protects the North, but it hurts the South. That's pretty much it. It angered the South. So I'll give you another minute for that, and then we're going to move on to the actual crisis, where the crisis happens, because there is a crisis and it will happen. So I'll give you about a minute for here. If you need more time than that, let me know. And then we're going to move on to where the crisis occurs, because there will be a crisis. It'll be after Jackson's reelected. About 40 seconds left. All right, let's move on. So the force bill, this is Jackson's doing. So now we're talking about exclusively Jackson's reaction. So tariff abominations, South Carolina hates it. Everybody's really angry. Well, in an attempt to kind of fix everything, Jackson passes a tariff of 1832. So this is one of your terms, right? Tariff of 1832 reduces the tariff, but South Carolina is still angry. It doesn't reduce it enough. South Carolina is still very mad. So South Carolina passes an ordinance of nullification. They meet as a state, the state legislature meets, and they vote 136 to 26. So the total was 136 against the tariff, 26 for the tariff. So they nullify the tariff. They threaten to secede from the union on top of that. So they're going to ignore the tariff, And they're going to say, and if you try it again, we're going to leave the Union. We're going to leave the country. We're going to become our own state. Our own country, I should say. Now, we've been talking about Jackson for a little bit. General, war hero, racist, right? Indian remover. Does Jackson strike you as the type of guy who is going to allow a state in the Union to leave? Think about how much federal power he used already, right? No, he is not. Seems like a Jedi. I don't know about that, but he is definitely not going to allow a state to leave the Union, right? He's the guy that's, you're talking about the guy who said the executive is the supreme law of the land, right? The guy that vetoed more than any other president put together. So Jackson passes something called the Force Bill. And what the Force Bill does is it allows Jackson to use the army to enforce the law. That's good. The Force Bill, right? So it allows Jackson to use the army to enforce the law. So let's paint the picture, right? Tariff of 1832 comes out. South Carolina nullifies the tariff. We're not paying it. And if you try to make us pay it, we're going to leave. Jackson gets permission to use the army to say, yes, you are going to pay it. And if you try to leave, I'm going to invade with the army. So things are pretty tense. One side saying, we're not going to pay that tariff. The other side saying, I'm going to invade and make you. Well, then comes along a guy named Henry Clay. Yes or no, do we remember Henry Clay's nickname? If it's a yes, type it in. If it's a no, just put no. Or what we called him, why Henry Clay is a big deal. Because he's a big deal. But we only talked about this once and it was a while back. So I see some no's. Can I get a couple of more either no's or yeses if you do remember it? It's okay if you don't. It was a while ago, but we're going to talk about it now. And from here on in, we got to remember his nickname. He sounds familiar. Don't remember. Okay. No, Gio, not what? No. Okay. So Henry Clay's nickname was the Great Compromiser. Now, they call Henry Clay this because he was from the frontier, a border state, and he knew what the North wanted and he knew what the South wanted. And Henry Clay specifically is really good at coming up with plans, with deals, with agreements that they both agree on, that they're able to see and everybody's like, okay, and everybody's happy. The way it'll end up working out over time is while Henry Clay's around, when things look like they're about to explode into a conflict, which that's why this is the crisis, by the way. That's why there's a crisis going on, because it almost blows up. Jackson's about to invade. We already said it, right? He's not the guy to be messed with. He literally used to get into gunfights as a hobby. So he's not the guy to mess with this stuff. But Henry Clay will come up with a plan. He'll calm everybody down, and he'll make a tariff that South Carolina will agree to and that the Jackson and the government are happy with. That happens in 1833. In the next couple of years, as a hobby, he used to like getting into gunfights and gambling and stuff. He used to get into duels all the time. It was like one of his things. It's one of the things that his opponents used to say. Like, this is a caricature, obviously, but the argument that this is a recent one too, but his opponents, like John Quincy Adams and stuff, used to say like he was a murderer. He used to get into duels all the time because he did. But anyways, back to Clay, right? So as time goes on, Clay will always be there to fix the problem before a civil war happens. Funny enough, he's going to die. And when he dies, a few years later, civil war, because he's not around to stop it, you could argue. Now, eventually that civil war would have had to happen. It was inevitable. Too much had been done, but we'll get there when we get there. Just know that Henry Clay is the compromiser. If you didn't know that, which we didn't, write that again. Henry Clay is the compromiser. He's the guy that's going to come up with all the deals. He's the guy that came up with the Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, the Tariff of 1833. He's going to be coming up with these deals over and over again until he kicks the bucket and dies. So I'll leave this up for about 2.5 minutes because you pretty much need to get this. And then on the next slide, I have the order of how they happen, like the timeline. So you can fill that in if you want. So 2.5 minutes on here, and then we'll go to the timeline. Even though it's not really a timeline, it's more like time boxes. So I'm going to set it for 2.5 minutes. Do me a favor. When you're done with this slide, can you just type in done? So I know that we can move on once I get a good number of those and I see that we're ready to move forward. Got 2 already. Okay. So like when you're ready, just hit done and I'll know we're good to move on. Two minutes left. About 1.5 minutes left. Again, as you're finishing, if you can hit done so I know that we're done. All right, it's looking like a lot of us are done. We're at about 2 minutes and a little bit of change, so I'm going to move forward. If you needed more time, let me know, and I can go back in a little bit. But now, so this is the crisis. This was the crisis. And again, this is a little timeline of it to kind of help you out if you need it. So I'll leave this up for about 1.5 minutes. This kind of just dates it. This is in 1828. South Carolina nullifies federal tariff threats to secede, right? 1828, 1832. It's right in 1832. So this is the initial thing that happens. Once this happens in 32, Jackson gets permission to use the army. This is the force bill. And as everybody's about to fight and it's all about to explode, Henry Clay proposes the tariff of 1833. Everybody calms down, but tension's still high. So yes, everybody calmed down. Nobody did the extreme thing of like invading or seceding, but everybody's still mad at each other. And they're going to stay that way till, after the Civil War. So the tension rises and it stays that way. Sectionalism. It's a term we haven't talked about yet, but we will very soon. So again, quick minute and change on here. If you need to get it in sequence, I would recommend it. It will help. So 28 to 32, 32, 33, and then after 33 to 65. Or 61, I'm sorry, 33 to 61 would be how you'd sequence that out. About 30 seconds, and we'll move on. Okay, we're gonna move on. If you need this, screenshot it, timeline kind of. So, key point 2. The bank wars is the name that we give Jackson's campaign against the Bank of the United States, the federal bank. Throughout his presidency, he will fight and scratch and claw and combat this bank at every step of the way. After he wins re-election and through a veto, he will successfully defeat and destroy the Bank of the United States. This was Hamilton's bank, by the way, the one that Hamilton fought to get. the one that was approved in 1807 and chartered again. Jackson will kill it. The reason the Bank of the United States, the federal bank, is not around right now is because Jackson kills it. And we'll talk about why and how in the next couple of slides. So give you a minute and a half for that key point, and we'll move on. About a minute left. So if we had the Bank of the US now, it's hard to say what would be different. But what I will say is all the banks we have now were like privately owned and funded and stuff. The whole point of the Bank of the US was it was federal. I honestly couldn't tell you because I do not know enough about like economics and banking to tell you like intricately how it would be different. But I would say that the way the system is set up now is set up for like competition and for different banks and it's smaller scale and it's scattered. So it's scattered that way and it's more of a free enterprise capitalist kind of setup. The federal bank was always supposed to be there as like the stable, this is as strong as the federal is. So it's hard to say. I will say that things like financial panics and things might be less scary. And we're going to get into what all those mean in a second. So it is hard to say, I will say that, Prem, but overall it would be so different, it's hard to say because it's been gone for so long that the way it would have worked now wouldn't have even been how it would, like, it's hard to compare. That's a great question though. I will try to find a better answer for you when we do reviews on this topic, but as far as I can tell, it's very hard to tell. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So, bank wars. You do not need to write anything under this part. You just need this first part, right? The name of Jackson's campaign to destroy the Second Bank of the U.S. Started after he was reelected. So a little bit of background about Jackson and why he was elected and what he believed to his core and all that stuff. Who are Jackson's biggest supporters? You can type it or you can come off mute and say it. Who are Jackson's biggest supporters? Who is he there for? Who does he think? Who has his back and whose backs do he have? Not quite the South. Not quite the South. Farmers is closer. What am I looking for, though? Specifically, what type of farmer? Wealthy farmers?
Common people.
Common people. Farmer Joe, right? Regular people. So whether you're a farmer or a factory worker or any type of like average person struggling to make it out there, Jackson was your guy. He fought for you. That's what he told people. And to be honest, that's what he did. He fought for the poor, for the average, for the regular. And the poor and the average and the regular, especially if you're not from the North. Oh, well, something happened to my screen. Did you guys lose the screen? Is it back? We're good? Yes, no? Still good? Okay, my screen.
We're good, sir.
All right.
I can see your screen.
Okay.
Bank wars.
It's back now, but it cut out, so I panicked. Okay. So again, if you're poor, average, the regular people, they liked him. He fought for them, and they wanted to vote for him in a return, right? That's why he wins in like landslides. He's the champion of the common man because he is a common man. Now, to regular people, the Bank of the United States was specifically set up to benefit Northerners, wealthy people, and bankers. Not so much Northerners as much as wealthy Northerners and bankers. So to regular people, the Bank of the US is this corrupt, established thing that's just there to help rich people get richer. Hence the portrait of General Jackson slaying the many-headed monster. And when you look at the many heads, they look like wealthy bankers because that's what they were. Because to regular people, the bank only represents wealthy people. And Jackson's whole thing is, I will kill this bank, right? So a couple of quotes. He also blames them for a financial panic that happens in 1819 that we'll talk about in a little bit. You are a den of vipers and thieves. I have determined to rout you out. Rout means to make retreat. And by the eternal, I will rout you out. So Jackson's basically vowing he's going to destroy the bank. Another one. The bank, Mr. Van Buren, who's his vice president, is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. These are real quotes that Jackson used to say during his struggles at every single turn trying to get rid of the bank. It's still good. If you're talking about the Bank of the U.S., the Bank of the U.S. isn't around. Now, I preface all this to tell you why he's trying to do it so you can hopefully understand that bad things will happen shortly after Jackson destroys this bank, and they will happen for a little while, and eventually things will get better, right? We're doing okay now. He doesn't know bad things are going to happen when he does it. And when he does it, though, I want you to remember this. Everybody's okay with it. Kind of like Indian removal, right? Indian removal is a horrible thing. Everybody was just fine with it when he did it. And they're just fine with him. And when I say everybody, I mean like the average voting person. They're just fine with him getting rid of the bank. In fact, a lot of them want him to do it because after he's reelected, he feels like the country wants him to do it. So he's even more determined to get it done. So this was quick. Do we need time on this? Yes, no, I don't think we do because it was just that little bit. If someone needs time, just tell me stop or yes, I need time. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Give it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to move on then. So we already talked about this, so we don't need to do this. End of the bank. So here's what happens. Here's what ends the bank, and I'll kind of talk through what you need. So you don't need everything word per word. Jackson will stop depositing federal funds into the Bank of the United States. He will stop doing it. He's like, no, I hate this bank. This bank's the worst. I'm not going to use it. And I'm talking about federal money, not his money. So he will start using smaller pet banks. This is a term, pet banks. I would add this term, which are smaller state banks that the president will use for the federal money instead. There's a guy named Nicholas Biddle. All you need to know about Biddle is he will start a financial panic to try to convince Congress to keep the bank. But his plan's going to backfire, and it's going to give Jackson the ammo he needs to attack the bank. Right? So if Jackson is attacking the bank, a financial panic just gives him more ammo to use. So when the bank of, this should say bank, not band, of the U.S. charter comes back up to vote, Jackson's going to veto it. So when it comes up, hey, we need to continue the Bank of the U.S., Jackson vetoes it, and that's it. The bank's dead. Dead in the water. So what do you need on this slide? You need to get the term pet banks and what they were and how Jackson used them. You need to know that when the bank comes up for a vote, the charter comes up again, Jackson vetoes it. And I would add somewhere in there, Biddle tries to start a panic or starts a panic to try to get support for the bank. Like, hey, look, we need the bank. Look, there's a panic. And all it does is backfire and it gives Jackson the ammo he needs to kill the bank. So Jackson gets his wish and kills the bank. And he does this right at the end of his term, right in 1837, I believe. And there will be major, major consequences that we will get into for the last key point in the last slide. So I'll leave this up again another minute. About 40 seconds. All right, so let's move forward. Key point 3 is up. I'll give you a minute and a half for key point 3. After Jackson's presidency, his vice president, Martin Van Buren, will be elected, and he will win in another landslide. Van Buren's presidency will have the Trail of Tears take place, and it will also be where the Panic of 1837 happens. These are two major consequences of Jackson's actions. And part of why for a long time Jackson was always seen as he was the best, he was the people's champion, yada, 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 is because all of the bad stuff, not all of it, but a lot of the bad stuff that some of it we talked about yesterday, we're going to talk about the rest of today, that happens, the consequences of his actions, don't start being felt until Van Buren is president. So again, quick minute and a half. Let's focus up. Let's get this key point down. And then we're going to move on into the election, which you don't need to write anything for, and then the financial panic that hits. And we're going to talk about what a financial panic is, because I know sometimes that can be a little rough. Be right. About a minute left. Guys in chat, focus up. We're still done. We're not done yet. Can you see this? Yes, you can. Awesome. Okay. Can you use this in a bit then? All right. About 20 seconds. Can I get a yes or a no? Do we know what a financial panic is? When I say financial panic, do you know what's happening? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, nope. Okay, so we're going to talk about it. Before I do, again, don't write anything here. The election of 1836 happens. Van Buren runs as a Democrat, and then the Whigs send a couple of candidates out. Van Buren wins. Even if you combine all three of the Whig candidates together, Van Buren still wins. But the Whigs split the vote and hurt themselves and shoot themselves in the foot and stuff. They won't do that again. Panic but money, kind of. It's a panic about money. So before you write anything, ignore this. I was trying to make it digital. It didn't happen. I'm going to use this sneeze guard thing on the desk to kind of show you what I mean. So this line, you see the line kind of, you kind of see it, is the economy going normal. Kind of works, right? A panic would be just it dropping down into nothing. So I'll use the line on the slides to kind of help a little bit. The economy is going normal. Everything's happy. Everything's fine. When a financial panic hits, crash. Fast, instant. A financial panic is the economy suddenly and drastically crashing down and being in bad shape. Not, oh, it's getting worse, or, oh, it's not great times right now. Crash, sudden, fast. That's a financial panic. So get the term for financial panic. Make sure you write it down. Financial panic is when the economy suddenly and drastically collapses. Now, there is a financial panic that happens in 1837, and it's for a couple of reasons. It's not all Jackson's fault, although it mostly is. There's land speculation that is bad and crop failures. Land speculation means that people think that there's a lot of land out there that's worth something, and then it's not worth a lot. Currency issues led to inflation. People were printing too much money, inflation. The National Bank is vetoed, which means that it is not going to happen, which means that everybody who had their stake invested in that bank It all goes down. States overextend in infrastructure projects. What was the name of that system that was states building up their infrastructure, adding more roads and railroads and canals? What was that system called? Had a name. We put it up in the era of good feelings and it's still going. The American system, that's right. So the American system projects that were going on, were costing a lot of money, and a lot of states were spending too much money in that. And it all happens at a bad time. Banks close, unemployment skyrockets. There's an economic depression for years to follow. 5 years of bad economy in the United States, all in part due to a couple of small things like inflation, some crop failures, and the veto of the National Bank. And this happens while Van Buren is president. So I'll give you about 2 minutes for this slide. I'm going to move this desk that I moved over here back to where it was, and then we'll talk about what we are doing next. This is the last slide for notes. About a minute left. Minute and change. About 20 seconds and we're moving on. All right. So exit ticket time. It should already be posted in Google Classroom. Here it is. This should not take us more than, I'll say 10 minutes. And I'm giving you way too much time, but I'm giving you the time for a reason. So it's multiple choice. It is 2 different multiple choice sections. The way it works is I want you to read it through carefully. Treat it like a multiple choice. Read it through a little carefully, be careful. And then what you would do, write the letter and then proof. Give me 1 sentence of proof. It doesn't need to be more than a sentence, but there needs to be proof. If you don't give me proof, you're not getting credit on the response. So answer the question. Give me 1 sentence of proof. Say, hey, the source talks about this, or in the notes it says this. Give me 1 sentence of proof that justifies your response. That's why you're getting extra time, because I want you to go out there and justify the response. So I'll give you about 10 minutes on the clock. I will stay in the Zoom for those 10 minutes. If you need anything, let me know. I will be here to answer questions or to help out. Otherwise, as long as this is submitted, you are good to go. By the way, yesterday's exit ticket, I got a bunch of people that are going to get zeros on it because more than a bunch of you haven't turned it in. So just keep that in mind. Grades were updated today and some of you. So make sure that you keep that in mind as we move forward. Make sure you're submitting your exit tickets. About 7.5 minutes. Six minutes. Jay, give me 1 second, and I will try not to type it to you. I want to tell it to you, so give me 1 second so I can pull it up, and we'll talk you through it, because it's not so much the system that we talked about. So for number 4, it's asking you the guiding principle that Jackson kind of uses to point out the injustices. And it's saying, like, what does Jackson use to say, like, look, the government's being unjust? Does he use limited government? Does he use a two-party system, universal suffrage, or civil service system? So we haven't talked about a civil service system, but when the question's asking you, when Jackson says, hey, the government's being unjust, look at what they're doing, which one of these things does he use as proof? Does that make sense? You can either type like, yeah, that makes sense. No, it doesn't. Is Steven still here? Yeah, he's here. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So it's not so much like that. If you don't know what civil service system is, I'll say it's a safe bet that probably isn't the answer, because it's asking you which principle does he use to kind of support his plans or to support his claims. Like, he's claiming, hey, the government's unjust. What's his proof? Which one of these things does he use as proof? It's pretty much what it's asking you. They're unjust. Look, they're breaking this. Something like that. All right, guys. I'm about at time. If you need anything else, if you're still struggling with this, message me on Teams. You don't understand 5. Okay, let's talk about 5. Which of the following groups provided the greatest support for Jackson's veto of the bank? So Jackson, bam, is going to veto the bank. Which group helps him out? Is it manufacturers? Is it nativists? Is it Southerners? Or is it Westerners? Which group of those 4 needed the bank the least?
Do we say it? Do we say it?
Don't say it. Just, that's the question. Does that make sense, Jonathan? Like, and think about it. Of all those groups, who used it the least? Okay, that's what it's asking. Any last questions before I end the call? Because, I mean, we still have time. I was just going to end the call because it looked like you guys were all working hard. But if there's any last questions, now would be the time. All right, guys. Have a good day. If you do have a question, send me a Teams message. Have a great day, guys. Y'all take care. Have a good one. I'll see you all tomorrow.